Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama. Okay, this is going to help. Okay. I usually don't need a mic, so I hope this enhances the Hare Krishna. It does, right? What do you think? It's good. Okay. So I have a morning sangha. I think maybe half of you were on that, and I spoke about Ramachandra. But I'm going to speak again, and I think it will be a little bit different. But I'll repeat some of the points, and I think it'll lead to something else. So first, I started just by relating a story that it was a very special wedding in India. We know Akinchana Krishna and Rati Manjari. So it's like Kirtan royalty, and Indradumna Swami, who's the master of festivals, thought we can make a great festival of this. So what happened is that Akinchana Krishna's parents came, and they never ever saw devotees before. I mean, besides their son. So it was really kind of a little nerve-wracking for him. And his father brought his best friend, and his best friend was the number 2 man in the government when Michael Bloomberg was the mayor. And so he's sitting there at the wedding in the front, and I'd say like 40 babushkas, because a lot of Russian people. Sometimes I joke when I lived in Vrindavan. I had a place in the Russian building, a lot of old Russian ladies, and I sometimes said that I was the only person in the building over 60 that had teeth that were not gold. So it was really so they were there. It was a scene, and so I had to give a lecture and to introduce the wedding. And I saw you when you speak, you have to kind of accommodate everybody, and I saw these new people there. So I started telling about this essay written by this famous satirist named Tom Wolfe, and New York Magazine, the best. His articles were the best. Brilliant guy. And he wrote an article criticizing my generation that got into all this self-improvement about me, that type of thing. So he wrote it. He called this, my parents' generation, they went to World War II. They thought that was the greatest generation. And there's millennial and Gen Z. He called it the me generation. And he had one line in there that was so relevant to Ramayana, which is the story of Ramachandra. He said, they'll never understand duty above self. And that's the whole theme of the Ramayana. And I was also speaking how in a culture, and I quoted, I think they asked somebody, Mahatma Gandhi, I said, what do you think about American culture? He said, I wish they had one. So in a culture that there's kind of, books that embody the culture. In India, the number one selling book in India for 5,000 years has been the Ramayana, the Mahabharata. And it's amazing when you're in India, the kind of how it pervades the country. And I always remember they had on Indian television, they had a serial, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and the whole country, you couldn't find a person on the street. And it coincided with Parliament, and they had to change the time of Parliament. They have that kind of spirit. And the thing about it is, it's just such a engaging story, and it's an engaging story that really you need exemplars in society. How do people change? You need people. Voltaire. I always quote Voltaire. He says, "We that which you appreciate comes to you." So you have to have these stories in your life, in the life of the youth, to kind of, and it's so engaging. I was speaking to Niranjan Swami about it. We're talking about the Ramayana because I just was with him in Vrindavan. I had never read the book. I've never read the book, and I just thought, oh my God, I'm coming back. It's my first class. It's my first class back. It's my first class back, and it's the Ramayana. And I always dreaded giving class on Ramayana because I have all these things I want to share, and then it's the Ramayana. I don't know anything about the Ramayana. So about 2 weeks ago, I started this marathon to read the book, and I finished it yesterday, and it's just so engaging. The story and the quality of the people. So when I thought, okay, what will I do for this kind of class, is while I'm reading, I'll just pick out different sections that inspired me and maybe tell them in context, and then illustrate the point. So I was doing this, and then when I got to the very end, there was a very interesting part, and I spoke about this in the morning for Sita. And so somehow or other, her sons, they go up to the ashram of Valmiki, and he hadn't seen his sons for 14 years. And still they grew up okay. There's no trauma there, but they come back. He's never seen his sons. And Valmiki, he's the one who wrote the Ramayana. And he was teaching him to love in Kush. And he was teaching him to sing it in these beautiful melodies. And they became very, very expert at it. And their voices were like Gandharvas. They could sing so beautifully. So there's a part in the Ramayana where Valmiki says, Sita tells her sons, don't tell Ram that you're their sons yet. If he says, oh, who are these? When he hears you sing, he's going to say, who are these people? Then just tell him, we're the students of Valmiki. So they begin to sing in the most engaging, beautiful way. And then it's kind of described in the Ramayana too, that what this Ramayana is. So it says it's replete with the 9 sentiments of love, pathos, mirth, heroism, terror, wrath, disgust, wonder, and serenity. So these are the 9 rasas. So it's understood in rasa theory, in classical Indian literature, that there are 9 emotions that are consuming. And these are the foundation of any literature you write. And what good literature is you take these emotions, or take one of these emotions, and then there's a whole theory how you can compose it in a book so that the audience has the same feelings as the people who were experiencing them. If it's tragedy, you'll feel tragedy. If it's romance, you'll feel those kind of feelings. If it's heroism, charge, you'll feel those sentiments. And then there was a whole rasa theory how that was uplifting, and it's beyond this class. So, does mirth mean humor? Mirth. So it says it's replete with the 9 sentiments of these rasa feelings, They're all there, and they evoke in you. And the boy's expert singing creates a vivid picture of the story. They are telling it, and we feel it as we are seeing it actually happen. And that's the purpose of drama. You actually feel the same things of those people, but because your ego is not connected to it, it doesn't have a degrading feeling. It has like an uplifting feeling. It's very interesting because it's the tragedy. You enjoy tragedy. You feel the tragedy, but you enjoy tragedy. You enjoy the tragedy. It has some uplifting feeling. So then I thought, okay, so this is what the Ramayana is. It does two things. It it gives you this feeling of love for Ramachandra Bhagavan. You can't help it when you hear his qualities. And it also injects it with the proper moral feelings. When I was in Vrindavan recently, I'm giving class, and this guy about 40 years old comes into the class. Very pure looking person. And he sits in the class, and I was told by the person who's bringing him, he's an ISKCON devotee, but he's actually a great Sanskrit scholar. And then I find out he's the 19th generation from Govardhan Das, who was an associate of Raghunath Das Goswami. And the guy still has these samskaras. And then was giving a few classes, and I attended some of his classes. Such a humble guy. And he gave a class on Nityananda Leela, on Nityananda's appearance day. I wish I had it, but he described what they each represent: Nityananda Leela, and then Krishna Leela, and Ram Leela is Dharma. Dharma means duty, the right thing to do. I have my own unique definition of Dharma. That every minute we have a myriad of choices to make. That's what life is. And our decisions determine our fate or future. So it's so important to make the right decisions. So there's in the Shastra, in the sacred text, which we feel are divinely revealed, there's a science of choice. And the choice is according, it's not, one man's food is another man's poison. For some person, a choice may be attachment in this circumstance. You should get married. Another person, it should be detachment for you. You should become renounced. So the Dharma means the right choice. And the right choice doesn't necessarily conform to our impulse. And the right choice will lead to auspiciousness. The right choice will elevate the consciousness. There's somehow more people coming, so move up a little bit. Okay, come on in. Great. The more the merrier. So the right choice will elevate the consciousness. So society has to be inspired. Society has to be inspired to make the right choice. And we see in that you have to know what the right choice is, and you have to have the discipline to do it. You need jnana and vairagya. Without knowledge, you will not know what to do, and without vairagya or discipline, you can't do it. And we can see, we all have experience in our own life. We all have experience with people we're related to, that they make choices based on impulse and not what's right. Sometimes because they don't know what's right. Sometimes because they don't want to do what's right. and sometimes because they can't do what's right. So this book is the maximum inspiration for duty over self, for duty over self, selfishness, duty over the right choice, and it's really powerful, and it's maximum sacrifice right from the beginning, because Dasarath made a promise to his wife. He had a beautiful young wife, and she saved his life. I'll give you whatever you want. She said, okay, not now, I'll save them. And then she becomes influenced. Somehow she loved Ramachandra, the son of Dasarath. She loved him, but she became influenced by someone, and that wasn't her son. Dasarath had many wives, and then she was influenced to think that there was some politics against her own son. Boy, but sound vibration can so much pollute you, right? You hear what he did. You hear what he did. This. People spread lies. They create false realities that you live in, that you make your choices. Maybe we're living in the Matrix. A little science fiction. So it create realities, and people can do it. You can tell them something that's not true that becomes part of the reality. And then based on that, you can tell them something else. And based on that, and before you know it, they're living in a false world. And then the choice they'll make, which may be the right choice based on the false world, is actually so she did that. She was influenced, and she thought there was actually a conspiracy against her own son. She became angry, and then she told Dasarath, you promised me, so I want my choices now. Yeah, oh yes, dear. I want you to install my son on the throne, Bharat, and I want you to ban Ram for 14 years. And if you understand in the Ramayana who is Ram, he is the most attractive person that ever lived in everything. And he loved him more than his life. And the fact that when he had to, because of Dharma, because he made his word. And I was describing this before, and I met this, it doesn't exist anymore. When I came to India, people who were the next generation up, who still lived in that culture without internet, without contamination, where that Dharma, they grew up Dharma. The quality that people had is if they gave their word, they'd rather die than lie. Where we live in the world of rationalization, I describe rationalization as the intelligence, the intelligence in the service of the false ego. Well, it wasn't really, and I don't really have to do that. Maybe it was, it wasn't really my fault, and this was just this, and that was just this, and we figure out a way not to do our duty, and our consciousness degrades, and we become miserable. So this culture, it instilled in their heart, and then Niranjan Swami, he told me, he gave a lecture, and he said he took from Ramayana the qualities of Ram: beauty, strength, free from envy. No one was as virtuous. Serenity of mind. Never paid back harshness with harshness. Gifted with self-restraint, was pleased even with a single benefit done to him. A little something done with him, he's grateful. Yet he didn't even remember 100 offenses committed to him. And even during when he was practicing weapons, and he was so intent on these kind of trainings because he was a kshatriya. So you can imagine he's in the middle of his training, and a saintly person came, uh, an older person came, a virtuous person came, a wise person came. He wouldn't fail to interact with them. So, I mean, there's so much, like 3 pages of these qualities. He was young, eloquent, healthy, free from disease. He was conscious of right time and place for anything he'd done. He can ascertain the potential of people and empower them. He was born a sage in the world. He only entertained thoughts of befitting his dynasty. He honored the conduct of a kshatriya. He was kind-hearted and compassionate, cool-headed, righteous, worshipper of the Brahmins, saintly, a man without meanness, a man without meanness. Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram, Patita Pavana Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Sita Ram. So much in India. Raja Ram, they're praying. They're praying for that type of leadership, of, of, of Dharma. And when that type of leadership is there, then everything becomes auspicious because Sahayagya Praja Shrishva Ishavo Vishadam Anena Pasavishyat Ishav is come. Sahayagya Prajo Vacha Parovacha Prajapati Anena Pasavishyadvam Ishav. Everything's auspicious when people are religious, because the world is created to reward good behavior. Nayam lokas yagyasya kutanya. With sacrifice, there's no happiness in this life or next. Because we're inherently selfish coming to this world, according to Bhagavad Gita, to even have a society that can function peacefully, people have to have some restraint. They have to do some sacrifice. So it's rewarded. It's rewarded. So everything is prosperous in his kingdom. The rains would fall at night. People wouldn't have to farm because the rains would come so regularly and the food would just come. So this righteousness, and you can see this Dasarath, he had to follow. He promised. Lines on a stone. And I gave one example that when I was in the Gurukul, the principal before me, Dr. Omkarnath Sharma, he came from that type of culture. And the story of his life is he had it was a joint family, and he had a younger brother and he had an older son, and they were a little bit contemporary. And he told me his younger brother was a rascal, but he had to side with him. So his son was sensitive. He became upset, and his son left home. And after 1 year, it was his only child. His wife died of a heartbreak. And when that happened, he vowed, until my son comes home, I will never again eat anything sweet. I will never have any grains. I will never have any spices. And when I knew him, it was like 30 years later, he only had fruit and yogurt one meal. No, milk and fruit one meal, boiled vegetables and yogurt another meal. so many years. They would make vows. And because that was so important, because if you wanted to improve yourself, all you had to do is promise, right? Now, I want to lose weight. I will not eat this. Done. Now I want to improve in my spiritual life. I will change. Done. So this truthfulness, it was ingrained. And this dharma, that was the main dharma. So Dasaratha, he had to accede. And then Ram had an obligation to his father. So he had to leave the kingdom, and he followed it. No one can convince him. People were trying to convince him, don't listen, don't do it, don't listen. You don't have to do it. No, I vowed. So the whole story, and then within the story, you get the rasa, because you get all these loving feelings. So I'll go over again. I did this morning, but I think it's okay. We can, I'll just go over some of the things I picked out. And, okay. So one thing in this rasa theory, if you want to have drama, there has to be the main thing that invokes the feelings is descriptions of the hero and descriptions of the people who love the hero. That's the basis. It's called a lamban. So the Ram's qualities are described. So it says, Ram felt no anger towards Kakeyi, and he did not want her to be blamed for what was, after all, a divine relationship. And I'm reading this book, and I told you this morning. I'll say it right now. That bitch. I was so angry. I was so angry with her. I was rooting for her to, and then Ram, no anger. Look what she did. She not only banished Ram, but basically she killed Ram's father, because his father died. And then Jaya, who's a big Ram fan, then describes at the end, Ram comes back to the kingdom, and she now realized what she'd done, and she's cowering in the corner, right? Right? You know what I would do with Ram? Screw her. Hey, and let her suffer. She's rotten hell. That right? So Ram is just like, and then Lakshman, so he has that bhakti for his brother Ram. He'll do anything for his brother, and he's ready to kill her and the father. You can, sometimes, right? Sometimes, okay, the parents, all right, you did this, I'll never speak to you again. You're such a rascal, right? So you could see and Ram said to him, "Don't censor your father or Kakeya." And they were moved by superior forces. Ram then asked that the sacred waters gathered for his installation be instead used to anoint him for his asceticism. He took a vow of asceticism, Ram. And he looked at his younger brother with affection. I'll depart, it's my destiny. And then that philosophical outlet. This is the height of Dharma, when you can understand that everything's coming from God. Everything's coming to you is for you. That's Dharma. And it's really tough sometimes. It's really tough. I remember one time a friend of mine thought I should have killed someone. and I had reason. And I walked in to see my friend, but my friend was extremely philosophical. And whenever you come in his room, there wouldn't be any prajalpa. He'd give you some kind of mystic puzzle for you to figure out. He said, I want you to close your eyes. So he said, just listen, just do it. So now I want you to put that person's face before your vision. I said, okay. Yeah. He said, you got it. Yeah. He said, now I want you to let him have it. Get him, let him have it, let him have it. And I was like, he said, go on. He said, give me good. He said, got his face there? Yeah, you got his face there. Then he said, now put your face there. Then I realized, right, that ultimately I'm the cause. And through the whole thing, you get these incredible instructions, and you get these feelings. And we're going to go further than what I did, but then I thought just these moral instructions. I love this one on the power of envy, because it's so powerful in this world. I think I'm going to go to Colombia, Max. I'm going to your country. I've been there more times than you. I have to speak to you about your nephew Yadaraj. We got to make a good plan for him. Okay, he's a great soul. Max's nephew is a saint. He's been living in Mayapur for like 15 years. He's a saint. Very learned, very cultured guy. So I'm going to Colombia. So I thought, okay, they're going to organize one lecture for me outside. What's a good lecture? So, Bhakti Devi, I'm a genius in branding, right? Okay. I got that from my mother, the self-praise. It's something that comes there. But so here's the title. The Yoga of Forgiveness, How to Give Up Justified Hate. Right? That's the tough one. But what happens is hate covers your consciousness. It's anti-yoga. Whether you're justified or not, it's anti-yoga. And that's what the society is. We get so much into this types of feelings for people and this and that, and it consumes us and polarized and hate. And look what Ram told his he told Lakshman, his brother, because the younger brother is going to be installed, because that's Kakeyi's, the younger wife's son. He's going to be installed. So he says, be especially careful not to praise me before Bharat, for men endowed with power and wealth cannot tolerate hearing others praised. Indeed, Bharat will be the king and should therefore be served by you with all attention, carefully avoiding any offense. Be careful. He could become envious. Don't praise me. Of course, they were all righteous. They weren't like this, but still, it's so there. And then I described like these in classical rasa theory, there are 5 emotions that bring whatever relationship that you're supposed. Like here, the relationship is love for Ram. That's the main thing. So there'll be 5 emotions, and one of the emotions are involuntary bodily reactions, hairs standing on end, and another one is transitory emotions. You're fearful of, like Mother Yasoda is fearful of Krishna's love, heightens distress, jubilation. There's 33 of them. So these are the Vyabhichari Bhavs. What happened? Seeing Ram leaving and his city plunged into despair, they loved him more than life. You can think of someone you really love, is really attractive, draws it out. You multiply it an infinite number. That's the qualities of Ram. Seeing Ram leaving and his city plunge into despair, the king fell prostrate. Upon being brought back to consciousness, he got up and, along with Koshala, ran after the chariot. Ram looked behind him and saw them trying to make their way through the crowd. He was unable to bear the sight of his father and mother in such distress. But what was their distress? It's Ram, Ram, it's love. But being bound by duty, he urged Sumantra, the chariot driver, forward. The charioteer was perplexed, and hearing from behind the king calling out, "Come back, come back, come back," and then being ordered by Ram to drive quicker, Ram said to him, "This pain should not be prolonged further. Make haste. My father reprimands you. When you return, you shall simply say that you should not hear him." Separation has three powerful things. A person is going, but he's with you. You're feeling separation. Then he's in the process of going. You're feeling separation. Then he's gone. The worst is when those wheels start turning. In fact, that's what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to experience. The love of Radharani at her height. And what was that? When Akrura was taking those chariot and those wheels were moving. What was her love at that moment? So that's also there. Let me see if I can find another one. Weeping all the while, Dasarath continued. When I heard that shot, I was so. Anyway, with Dasarath, he's thinking, okay, how did this happen to me? The worst thing that can happen in the world, is this son. In fact, it was on the day of his coronation. The greatest joy, he's now going to pass on the kingdom to his son Ram, and everyone's so happy because of Ram and Ram's qualities. I'll read more of Ram's qualities. He had understanding of art and craft, useful for entertainment. He knew proper ways of dispensing wealth. He was experienced in riding elephants and horses. He was the best among those skilled in archery. He was reckoned as a great wielder of war chariots. He was an expert in commanding troops. He was capable of being so many qualities. He was never malicious. He never slighted any living being, nor did he bow to the pressure of time. Thus endowed with such excellent qualities, the subjects in the three worlds held him in high esteem. In forbearance, he was like the earth, in wisdom like Brihaspati. So it goes on, and this person who's not only powerful, but so loving and so expert. And my son, my son, my son, my son. Even Sukadev, Vyasadeva, when Sukadeva Goswami was born, and then Atmaramas Chamuniyo Nigrana, because he was so detached, he was already self-realized, and he left to the forest. And Vyasadeva, the author of the Vedas, what did he say? My son, my son, my son. And what did he hear? The echo of the trees. My son, my son, my son, my son, my son. You know, a little something for those of you older. I consider myself the luckiest man in the world. How many get that? Raise your hand. Okay. You don't get that? I consider myself the luckiest man. You don't get that? Well, of course, your father trained you. That's right. Lou Gehrig it is. one of the greatest Yankees, the Iron Man. He held the record for consecutive games played. He was the second greatest player that ever lived. And then he got a disease that got named after him. ALS became Lou Gehrig's disease. And then he came to Yankee Stadium, and then he gave a speech about his life. And he said, I consider myself the luckiest, and it was echoed. I consider myself the luckiest man in the world. So Vyasadeva said, my son, my son, my son, my son, my son. And Dasarath is same thing. My son, my son, my son. He's calling his son. And he suffered so much. But now you get the philosophy. How is this weapon fallen apart? I'm simply a seer who's foreseen. Oh no, there's a Dasarath said, when I heard that, what happened with Dasarath, he was hunting and he heard something, and he shot an arrow. He thought it was, some animal that he was hunting, that he was allowed to hunt, and it happened to be, a person, a man that died, who was taking care of his parents, who couldn't fend for themselves. And then he said, yes, this was my karma. Now I'm feeling the same thing that couple felt when their son died. Now my son is going. Mm. Mm. So there's so many points, but let's see. And then, of course, Sita Devi, her qualities. And this is just one. This is a good one, Gopa. This is simple living and high thinking. Sita smiled. You know what happened when she's going to the woods? Leaving the palace and all the facilities. You know what she said? She felt joyful to be living there with Ram. Despite its simplicity, she liked forest life, preferring it even to her life of luxury in the city. She preferred it. I remember Hridayananda Maharaj, after became one of the gurus after Prabhupada, and then you get so much worship and so many things. He said, my happiest days is when I was a brahmachari in the ashram, and my only possession was my bead bag. When I came to Krishna Consciousness Temple, we didn't even have our own clothes. In the morning, you go up, and all the clothes were washed together, and you would have to go to a shelf and pick up a dhoti and a shirt. And if there are no kurtas left, then you had like a dhoti and a madras, or a dhoti and a poncho. Those are my happiest days. And then Ram, what is his joy? He says, for myself, I'm happier staying here in obedience to our Father than I would be in attaining to the imperishable abode of Brahma. Ram had to get matted. He matted his hair, and he was living so simply in the forest. The traditional sannyas, why would they go to the forest? Because it would teach them dependence on God. You'd be free from that conception that I am the maintainer and controller. Because you'd go to the forest and you need some place to sleep. Okay, there was a tree. You needed some food. There was some food. You needed protection. Sadhu Deke. In India, I've seen this. I saw this twice. When a sadhu saw a snake, they weren't afraid. They went Sadhu Deke. The snake saw a sadhu. Haridas Thakur in the cave with the python. Sadhu Deke. They saw a sadhu. I'll be protected. Relieved from all our energy in controlling and enjoying the world and our anxiety and our fear, right? Because this may go, this that I like, I'm going to lose. This that I don't want is going to be here. And this party is here. And that party is here. And this is there. And I can't control my little. And unless you're a Brahmin, you're not at that consciousness. A Kshatriya, a warrior, is not peaceful unless he has some land. A Vaishya is not peaceful unless he cheats. For you, I make no profit. They cheat you. That's their thing. And then a Sudra, unless they have a master. The Brahmins can be dependent on Krishna. I met this one person in Vrindavan. He decided, I want to learn dependence on God. He walked from France to India without any money. He got to Pakistan, then he had to fly to India, couldn't get through. He walked through Iran without any money. And he had a wife that was like beautiful like Sita. And she came with him sometimes. She would fly in and walk with him. And then I met him in Vrindavan. And he was protected. And when he would go to someone's house, the Muslim tradition was the guest is Allah. In the Hindu tradition, what's the guest called? Atiti Bhagavan. The guest is God. So this is like so many instructions here of high consciousness. And he's happier if I follow Dharma than anything else. And then they're traveling and they visit this place, and then the rishis are being tortured by the demons. And it's such a beautiful place, and the rishis just left. And he assured them, but they said the renounced ascetics were concerned. They weren't afraid of the demon. They were concerned that they may become attached to this material situation. Normally, they move from staying only 1 or 2 years in each place. Because once you stay in a place, you start to develop the conception that I am the controller and I am the enjoyer. You forget to see that it's actually God that's doing everything. There's 5 factors in action, and only one is the endeavor. You can see. So you learn all these subtle instructions through the Ramayana, and they just were. They didn't want to become attached. And then what happens when they travel? They would get fed. They would be protected. And you know what they would do? It's God feeding. It's God. So they also would develop love. That's why in Vrindavan, somehow I never had a place. Whatever Krishna gave me, I was satisfied. And now my karma has changed. And now I live in the Govardhan Hilton. Who knew? I got such a nice place. But I didn't take the best room. I stayed in my own place. Of course, Vrindavan has a way of and then Ram is being advised. Being a slave to your senses, cruel and evil-minded, you have adopted this course of action. People with leaders who are not self-controlled cannot prosper any more than sheep protected by a jackal. A terrible and unforeseen calamity has arrived at Lanka's door, O king, which will bring an end to the city as well. He kidnapped Sita, another person's wife. and she would not even look at him.